G'day and welcome back to episode 3. Today I'll be discussing some possible ruck combinations for the 2021 season. I believe that it's very important to nail down these two positions correctly at the start of the season so you don't have to worry about them throughout the year. I've had problems in the past and I'll go through some detail on what I've done that has failed and what I will do differently this year. So we'll start off with one of the most popular combinations so far, and that is Max Gawn and Braydon Preuss. So Max Gawn comes in at $751,400 and Braydon Preuss comes in at $303,000. So he's quite cheap. He's at mid-range price. We'll go through a couple of the pros and cons and why you should pick this combination and why you shouldn't. So if we go through the 2020 averages of both players, Maxi Gawn averaged a mammoth 140, and if you didn't have him throughout the year, you probably didn't finish very high. Braydon Preuss only averaged a 63, which was from only 3 games. But in those games, he scored 84, 84 and 19, which was riddled by injury, hence the low score. So a couple of the pros of selecting Max Gawn is he's the clear number 1 ruck in the competition, and he should average around the 120 to 130 margin yet again. Another pro is that Braydon Preuss is a great price. At $303,000, he's priced at around 60 points. Picking Preuss will free up some cash elsewhere where you can spend in other positions like in the forward line, possibly in the midfield or maybe in defence. So with that spare $300,000 and $400,000 that you may have if you pick Preuss over someone like Grundy or so, you may lose the 40 points that Grundy will score more than Preuss, but you'll be able to upgrade a rookie to maybe a mid-pricer or a mid-pricer up to a premium. Gawn is also a very reliable vice-captain option throughout the year, so you need to keep that in mind. Preuss is also very appealing because he's going to take the number 1 ruck role at GWS this year. So Mumford's about 50 and Preuss is still in his prime at around 27, I believe he is. And in the past he has demonstrated that he can score quite well when he is rucking solo. In the games throughout his career where he has just rucked solo, he has scores of 84, 85, 140 and 111. That's probably an average to around 105, which is quite good for someone that's priced around $303,000. With the little evidence that we have, this showcases that Preuss does have some relatively high scoring potential in the future. So the $300,000 price tag screams value for me. Now a couple of cons that we can go through here. Preuss has only played 18 games in his career. Even though he's been around for 3 to 5 years, there is still plenty of developing left in him. That's something to keep in mind as well. Another big problem that I have with Preuss is his tank big enough? Can he cover enough of the ground to play solo ruck? Now, fitness has been an issue for Preuss even when he was at North Melbourne. He has always been a mammoth of a man, big shoulders, big arms, big chest, but he just can't run out games. So he's always been playing second fiddle to the likes of Max Gawn and Todd Goldstein throughout his 3 to 4 years in the AFL system. I did see some footage of Preuss in January in GWS video there, and it looks like he has improved his tank over the off-season. He's dropped a few kilos, he has lost a bit of that muscle mass, but he's looking incredibly fit compared to recent years. Con number 3. Will he average enough points to justify picking him over someone like Braydon Grundy or maybe even a Reilly O'Brien? Grundy should average 110 to 120 if not more if he's at his best. And Preuss, you probably think he's got potential to average around the 100 mark if he's rucking solo. If not, he's probably not going to average much more than 70. So that's something that we should always consider when picking our starting rucks. Con number 4. Preuss is quite injury prone. I'd be worried about getting a full season out of him, and I think that fantasy owners that do start him, they may end up trading him quite early in the year, and then they won't have enough cash to upgrade him to someone like Grundy, who's around that $650,000 mark. If he goes down early, you won't be able to get the premium rucks straight away. You'll have to downgrade and upgrade, which would have wasted 2 trades to do that. So that's definitely a big concern for me. Con number 5. Gawn's starting price is ridiculously high. $751,000 is a lot of money to be spending on one player. Quite likely that he does drop below that $700,000 mark. It just depends when that happens throughout the year. It's a risky move to wait for that to happen. If he comes out and he scores 160 round 1 and 140 round 2, his price isn't going to go down. It may increase a little bit. So then you're already behind. You've lost the points, and his price hasn't decreased, which is what you were after. In 2020, he started the year at $700,000, and he ended up getting to $790,000 by round 8. His price did not get below $700,000 until round 14. Now, we did miss 3 weeks throughout the middle of the year. In a 17-round season, that's a long time to wait to upgrade him. Combination number 2, Braydon Grundy and Max Gawn. Grundy's priced at $648,200, and as we know it, Gawn's $751,400, which is a total of $1.4 million on 2 players. Wow. Their 2020 averages, Gawn 140 of course, Braydon Grundy only averaged 120. He came off 2 years of 130, so the 120 was probably something that wasn't really unexpected, but we were hoping that we'd get 130 out of him last year. Alright, let's go through the pros. Pro number 1. Both are extremely likely to average over 120 points, no doubt about that. Even though Grundy had a poorer year last year, he was playing throughout games injured. Well, it looked like he was injured. So that's some good signs that in 2021, if he's at full fitness, we can see him back to scoring those 130s consistently throughout the year. In 2020, Grundy had 15 out of 17 scores over 100, and 8 of them were over 120. If we look through his statistics from last year, he had big games of 151 in round 5, 144 in round 7, and 148 in round 12, and 127 there, and about 122 to finish off the season. In 2019, Grundy had 19 of 22 scores over 100. 16 of them were over 120, so that's some very high scoring potential from Grundy. And Max Gawn, he had 12 out of 14 scores over 100 in 2020. He did miss the 3 games, and 11 of them were over 120. If we can look back to 2019, he had 18 of 21 over 100 and a whopping 14 over 120. That's a massive strike rate from both players to not only score 100, but when they do score hundreds, it's likely they score 120, which is big. Pro number 3 is they're fairly injury free, so Grundy's rarely ever missed a game. If we go through his statistics, if we look at Grundy here, he played every game last year, every game in 2019, every game in 2018, and he missed the 2 in 2017, so he is extremely durable. You can guarantee that he'll play the whole season, if not he may miss 1 game. And Gawn's only missed 4 games over the last 3 years as well, and 3 of them were in 2020. He does have that knee strapped up a lot, but I don't think that is any concern whatsoever. He's currently got his knee strapped throughout training in January, so there may be a tiny bit of soreness there, maybe to support his knee. There's nothing to worry about there, I don't think. Pro number 4, they're easily the best 2 ruck choices by a country mile. Not only are they 2 best ruck choices, they're probably the 2 of the best scorers in the whole competition. No one's averaged close to Gawn and Grundy over the past couple of years, besides maybe Dangerfield and Tom Mitchell back in his Brownlow year, and Lachie Neale, who's been very consistent over the last few years as well. The cons. The only con here really is all about the price. The combination is just, it's way too expensive really. $1.4 million on 2 players is a ridiculous amount to be spending, especially if they don't score big straight away. If they play round 1 and both score sub 100 or around the 100 point mark, their price will drop considerably, and then you may be very concerned, oh no, I should have picked Preussy, I could have snapped up Grundy in round 5 by $150,000 cheaper, but then that's playing with fire there, I believe. Con number 2. Going a cheaper option in the ruck will allow you to spend money elsewhere. So we know, like I was discussing before, that you can upgrade that mid-price in the midfield, someone like maybe a Dyson Heppel, who's priced pretty well but he's currently injured, to someone around the 500 plus mark, which is maybe like a Jai Simpkin, who looks like he will break out even further this year. So the extra money will give you more opportunities to spend it elsewhere. Con number 3. In 2020, I started with Braydon Grundy and Tim English. In the end, it was a terrible decision. From the get-go, English scored under 70 in round 1, and I felt like I was already behind, especially when Max Gawn came out and scored 186 in round 2. I ended up trading English to Todd Goldstein, who was good value at the time and started off with 136 in round 1. And he was pretty good for the whole season until the last 10 weeks, where he only averaged 96 points compared to Gawn's 138. Now it's quite surprising that I finished inside the top 100, or 101 to be correct, but I had Goldstein all year and I lost all those points from not having Gawn. I can't imagine how high I would have finished up if I just had Max Gawn. So I ended up trading Goldstein to Gawn with 3 to 4 rounds to go in the year, and I was finally able to get Gawn's massive scores By this time of the year, Goldstein was popping out 70s, low 80s and a couple 90s. So I was glad that going into finals, I had Max Gawn on my team and he was my captain. So I won't be making that same mistake this year, I think. I also wasted the 2 trades to get Gawn in, possibly even 3 because his price was so high. Maybe I needed to downgrade someone to upgrade Goldstein to Gawn, so it could have been 3 trades. And trades are very, very important in Supercoach. Alright, so some potential other combinations that you may have. Ruckman number 1, we'll say Gawn/Grundy. You could have Reilly O'Brien. You could have Nick Nat Nui. You could have the Toddy Goldstein like I did in 2020. Or is it time for Tim English to explode onto the scene? Will he play ruck? Will he play forward? The addition of Stephen Martin from the Brisbane Lions. Yeah, I'm not sure how that affects Tim English. Apparently he's looking very fit, the fittest he's ever looked. So that might push Tim English forward, who's quite capable of kicking plenty of goals. So be wary of that as well. Alright, Reilly O'Brien, he starts the year at 570,000. Pros, bloody hard worker. He has a high time on ground percentage and is the clear number 1 ruck at Adelaide. He will rock solo. 2, injury free. Number 3, has seen massive improvements in his scoring every year for the last 3 years. 3 years ago he averaged 63. 2 years ago he averaged 95. Last year he averaged 106. I can see him averaging over 110 this year, possibly even 115. So at 570,000 you will save close to 80 to 90,000 picking O'Brien over Grundy maybe. You could go Gawn and O'Brien and he might surprise you. He might average 115 to 120. Keep a close eye on Reilly O'Brien throughout the pre-season. Pro number 4. He only had 1 score below 85 last year. He is consistent with his scoring. There's not much fluctuation, which is always nice. Pro number 5 is he's one of the least riskiest picks in the ruck. Cons. Number 1. You miss out on either Grundy and Gawn and precious points if he doesn't live up to the 110 that you're hoping for. Number 2 is there's potential for him to not reach the heights of 2020 when he averaged 106. Although that seems quite unlikely, he is coming to his prime and he has only played 40 games, so there's no reason for him to go backwards at all. Con number 3, he's a little expensive at 570,000, but isn't everyone a little expensive at the start of the year? It's always inflated more than it should be, so nothing to worry about really there. They're probably the only 3 cons that I can really find for O'Brien at the moment. Another option, Nick Nat Nui. 593,700, very expensive. Pro number 1 will be, in 2020 he posted his 2nd highest average in his career, which was 110, I think. 6 to 7 years ago he had 1 year where he averaged 114, but he's been very inconsistent throughout his career. Pro number 2, he has a high hit out to advantage ratio. That's where he scores the majority of his points. He doesn't collect many disposals around the ground and he doesn't kick that many goals, so he gets most of his points from knocking it down to Gaffey, knocking it down to Shuey, knocking it down to Redden. He will continue to do that in 2021. Pro number 3, he had 7 scores over 120 in 2020, indicating that he does still have the high scoring potential. Alright, now to the cons. Number 1, clearly overpriced. $600,000 for a ruckman who's only averaged over 110 twice in his career is far too much. Con number 2, he is due to get injured sooner rather than later. He has never played a full season and he's only played over 15 games in a season since 2015. So you can guarantee him missing 3 games minimum, possibly 5. Con number 3, his time on ground percentage is way too low. He plays best when fresh and in short spurts due to his limited aerobic capacity. So Nick Nat would only score more points if his time on ground percentage increases, which it really hasn't over the years. It always sticks around that low 70 percentage. You need to get that to at least 80% to be worthy of picking him. And the last con, number 4, is his inconsistency with his scoring. 7 out of 16 of his scores were under 100 last year, which is extremely frustrating when you have someone of 600,000 on your team popping out scores below 100 every second week. At that price tag, you don't want to be worrying about that. You want the consistency. It's what you paid for. So the verdict, it's an easy decision for me this year. I'll be starting with Gawn and Grundy with great confidence too. I won't be making the same mistake as I did last year, selecting Tim English or Todd Goldstein, because I'm behind the pack from round 1 and I don't want to be chasing tail all year. In 2019 I had both Grundy and Gawn and it was the best combination that I've ever had. BCC week in, week out. The only other option that I would possibly consider would be Gawn and Preuss. If Preuss is guaranteed to ruck solo and he plays pre-season and he's fit At 300,000, he has to come into consideration for everyone. There's no doubt about that. Alright, but that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it, and make sure, Gawn and Grundy. Don't forget. We'll see you in the next episode.